effectively.
As long as suffering of sentient beings remain, I will remain in order to serve.
I imagined God like my grandfather.
In conversation today, my guest is one of India's most distinguished, serious filmmakers, with a career that has spawned more than 40 years and more than 25 films. Today, he's regarded as the elder statesman of cinema in India. I'm delighted to welcome Mrinal Sen. Welcome, Mrinalda. This is sort of more of an honor and a privilege than you can imagine. You've made us wait 4 or 5 years before agreeing to appear in this program, and I really appreciate this. Thank you very much indeed. In the last few years, you haven't been as active and as productive as you have otherwise been. 26 films in a little over 40 years has been a very productive, intense filmmaking career. How does it feel not to have a film in the making?
Well, as long as I keep on working with celluloid, well, I have reasons to be very tense, and tension keeps me very youthful. That is one thing which I like very much. So without work, I have been without work for quite some time, not because I don't have any money backers. We people, we have always to chase money backers, and I have been chasing all my life. But now it is curiously what I see that I have a couple of filmmakers who ask me to go ahead with anything. They give me blank check to do anything in any language I like. And you possibly know I made films in 4 different languages, even though I don't have any flair for any language other than my own, which is Bengali. And now, when I have the money backers, ironically, I don't know what I am to do, what I am to hold on to. It may be because of the fact the situation around me is very confusing. It may also be because of my age. My neuron cells might be decaying, but I don't think my neuron cells have been decaying.
In what way do you say that the environment, the situation around you is confusing?
Well, this is what I find, and this is not just in India. I find this is a global phenomenon. You look around, you think of the films, how many good films you have seen anywhere in the world, how many good novels you have read recently, except for Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things. You can't you have to think about it. This is what has been happening. I see there has been a lack of creativity in the creative arts. What I find that there has been some problems. I don't know what, but this is a global phenomenon. This is a global crisis which we are passing through.
How does this sort of lack of intellectual vigor in the quality of writing and in the articulation of ideas, but why does it affect a great genius like Mrinal Sen from producing his vision?
Well, A, I'm not a genius. B, I'm a part of the whole makeup you see around yourself. So that is what it is. So I, like many others, I'm a pack of complexes, pack of contradictions, and I have been, at times I feel terribly upset when I don't know what am I to do. Every day I wake up in the morning and I feel possibly I will bump into an idea, and then possibly I will start making a film. And once an idea comes to me, I don't take much time either to write the script, and then again when I make the films, I don't have to always go by the words written in the scripts. I quite often, I grow with the script, I grow with everyday's shootings, I grow talking to the actors, I grow talking to the technicians. This is how we do. But then for quite some time. I have not done anything. I feel terribly bad about it.
Is there an element of fear here, waiting for the spark of inspiration, imagination?
I don't really know. I can't explain. I have asked myself the same question about myself. How is it I'm not making any film? My friends also ask me, how is it you are not making any? But I think there are some other things which also come to my mind. You see, talking about cinema. Cinema is my area. And I talk cinema, I think cinema, I eat cinema. And cinema is everything to me. My whole anatomy is full of cinema. And my kind of cinema. My feeling about cinema, don't take me to be a historian of cinema. But then, even then I feel that the language of cinema, and most particularly in India, has been to my mind oversaturated. It is high time that we change the language. Because you see, if you talk about literature, literature is a very old art form. And there you see the language has been changing so often and so beautifully. For instance, think of Arundhati Roy. Suddenly her name came to my mind. And everything is so different. You know, the syntaxing, the structure, the coinage of languages, the words, everything have changed. I think these have also worked. I think something in painting also, you find the same thing. The language of painting has also been changing. Music is changing. But in cinema, you find the same thing over and over again. It is high time that you have to think of a new language for cinema, and with visuals and with the word.
Well, we're waiting for Mrinal Da to give the lead in this.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I feel very flattered when you say it, but that also makes my case very, very difficult. But something comes up to me, something comes up. I think that I may be in a position to do something which may not be liked by the average people. And for that matter, you know, all that I have to do, I happen to be my own spectator, and the first spectator for that matter. And I have to satisfy myself. And only when I satisfy myself, I know that it will go. And every time I have made a film, I felt that this time perhaps I will hit the bullseye. Then on a certain Friday, when the film is released, I feel there could not be a bigger fool than me. And it doesn't work. And most of my films have been popular failures at the box office. I love the word popular. So that is what I say.
When you say hit the bullseye, what would hitting the bullseye mean for you?
Bullseye means, nobody in the world, under the sun, whoever makes a film, however difficult it is, he or she always feels like reaching the widest audiences. I am also think of the same. You know, there are people you will come across who says, I don't care for the popular acceptance. I don't care for wider acceptance. It is a lie. It's a lie, it's a blatant lie, I can tell you. Only when I see that I cannot reach the wider audiences, I try to develop a kind of, try to develop a kind of defense mechanism and say I don't care for the audiences. I do care. So when I see that I have not been able to reach the wider audiences, I feel like collapsing, and I have collapsed so many times in my lifetime.
And what keeps you going? 26 films
and
so much critical acclaim.
I don't really know what keeps me going. You know, every time my films flop at the box office, not always, but at times it has flopped, but it has been liked by minority spectators. That is quite enough for me. So I try to work out a small formula, which is very simple arithmetic. If my films are not very expensive, and films shouldn't be that expensive for any reason. The establishment is always there to tell you, filmmaking is a very expensive business, an expensive job, and nobody else's business, it is our monopoly. But our job will be to see, and this is what I have done myself, and my colleagues are there, all over India, they have also done the same thing, that have been very austere as much as I have tried to be. And if the films are made, and we have to prove that filmmaking is not as expensive as the establishment thinks it to be. And if it doesn't become very expensive, and even if it reaches only the minority spectators, there are so many minority pockets scattered all over the world. And if you have the right kind of agency, which takes your films to different areas in the world, minority spectators, so you can then cultivate a wider minority spectators. And if the cost of production is not astronomical, then there is no reason why the money will not come back and you will continue to remain in circulation. This is a very simple argument for me.
In real terms, what is this figure that we're talking about? 40 lakhs, 50 lakhs to make a
Well,
film?
my films, not even that, less than that. I tell you, many years ago in 1969, when I made a film called Doordarshan.
That was funded by the National Film Development Corporation. That was funded by the...
funded by FFC, Film Finance Corporation.
That's right.
It's now called
NFDC.
NFDC.
Right.
So they gave me the money.
Right.
But that was the time, it was very interesting. That was the time when you were to give collateral security. You have to collateral security if you want money from the bank, from FFC. So, or from NFDC. It was at that time it was FFC. So I didn't have any money. So when I gave an idea to them, not the full script, but an idea of a script, it was just 8-page script. A friend of mine I came to Bombay, and a friend of mine just pushed me into a room. And this is, I'm not talking rhetoric, and this is a fact, you know, and he bolted the door from outside and said, you cannot come here. You need 4 gallons of water, tea, I will give you tea. I will give you everything you want, but you have to write a script. And believe me, in few hours I wrote an idea which I had been toying with for quite a long time. But I knew that no producer will come to me to finance such a subject. And then in few hours I could write something in 8 pages. Idea by idea, I tried to structure a script. And this is all that I could give him, my friend. And it is who did the rest of the thing.
Who was this friend?
And
who was this friend?
That friend is called Arun Kaul. He is now in Delhi. And he liked me very much. And he was sitting on my neck. He wanted to see that it is done.
Well, that's maybe what we should do to get you onto your next project.
And then
now.
what happened, and then chairman of the FFC, he was a wonderful man. He was one called Himmat Singh. So he asked me, how do you make a film? Can you give me a guarantor? I said, had I had any guarantor in view, I would have straight away asked him to put in this money. And then there was somebody who was the technical advisor to tell the board whether this will work. And this man, he knew that you know how much did I want? I made the application in 68, by the end of 68, and I asked for 1,50,000 rupees for the entire film in black and white. 1,50,000 rupees. And then this gentleman, he could realize that is one of our Indian cultures. We can't do without it. He thought he will get his pound of flesh. And he could realize that I am not going to give him anything. And so he wrote a report. This is what I was told later on by the chairman. He prepared a report. He said that with such a theme, you can, at the most, you can prepare a large sequence of a film. That's all. And nobody can make a film with 1,50,000 rupees. So I got a letter from the chairman. He said, how could you make such a film with 1,50,000 rupees? I said, I simply don't know how I could spend more. And then they said, how do you make a full entire film out of this thin storyline? I said, I don't simply know how bigger you would be needing for me. But I think I can make a complete film. And then all that he did, this is what I heard later on. he rushed to Delhi, met Mrs. Gandhi and said, this is what is it. Now the technical advisor says that this is not a workable proposition. And it is she who suggested that let us take it as a test case and give him money without having any collateral security to produce. And that was how it was done for the first time in the history of FFC. And the money was given and the agreement was signed with no string attached, and I made the film. And by that time, Himmat Singh went in for politics, contested the parliament election, lost it, and there was another chairman, that is our B.K. Karanjia. When they saw the film, they liked it immensely. They said, this is a very, very new kind of cinema, something which we never heard of, something which we never saw before. And so it was liked very much. And the next day, I had to go there, and to prove that the film has been completed, I had to I had to give him a document, that is censor certificate. And he was all praised for the, Karanjia was all praised for the film. But the secretary, they're all very tough people. And the secretary spoke to him in whisper. And then he told me, Karanjia told me, Mrinal, I'm sorry, we can't accept this film. I said, how come you can't accept? You like the film very much. He said, no, you know, you have to make the film. The minimum length of the film should be 13,000 feet. But it shows that it is only 9,600 feet. And this perhaps is the shortest film even today, shortest featured film even today in Hindi. And then I said, all that you can do, why don't you send someone to Delhi? And let it be, there could be some kind of changes in the agreement. And you need a good film or a long film.
Right.
If it is a choice between a good film and a long film, you have to decide. And well, that was approved of. And since then, even in NFDC, that clause is not there anymore.
You're expressing
Well,
regret that the state of cinema in India in some ways was frozen, and you said my kind of cinema. So I wondered how you define your
kind of cinema is also, it is also very interpretative in a way. Now, nobody asked me this question. It may be because of the fact I have been changing all the time. So I need films which have not been made before. Okay? I need films where I can make the fullest, most intimate use of the visual and the word. And I have to see how I can make the visual and the word, two things together. Make a very, very interesting cocktail of the whole thing, not done normally. And then I have to see how I can de-emphasize, I say de-emphasize the incidents and the plots. But when we came to cinema, we were told that in cinema you have two incidents, one incident giving rise to another, that to another, and that to another. This is how a full story is told, that is how a full entire film is made. But right from the beginning, I wanted to go in for de-emphasizing the plots and the incidents, depending more on feelings, something like this. And this is what I have been trying to do, not that I have been successful.
Your film seemed to, at one level, a struggle between sort of the dominance of aesthetic and form and your need or your passion to recreate or to capture reality. In what ways do you experience this tension between the form and aesthetic that you're working with and your obviously overwhelming passion for reality, because your films tend to sort of weave their way in and out of sort of documentary and fiction?
Well, whatever the factors you have been talking about which build a film. So one doesn't negate the other. One doesn't certainly negate the other. You have to have the aesthetic excellence, A. B, you have to see how you can bring your passion very physically palpable, okay? And then many other things, whatever it is, it gets entwined, you know, all these things. This is how you have to do. And it's a very interesting experience to work on cinema, provided you don't have the money backer sitting on your neck all the time. It is like, you know, what you do, the very delight of making a film with a lot of things around you, with a lot of things with you in your possession. And since cinema, to a large extent, is a technological performance, you can go wild with all these things. Depending on the physical properties of two most important aspects of physics, sound and light.
Have you felt at some point frustrated between you know, the fact that film involves so much technology, between your, you know, your imagination, your conception of what you want to do and what you want to complete, and working with technology to achieve those results?
Well, yes, technology has been growing. Science and technology have been growing at very rapid pace.
And the science and technology of cinema.
Yes, and cinema, that's right. And cinema needs to change a lot. But it is also very true, I can't have the, you know, the latest technology with me, in my grip. With me, I cannot make use of it. And then again, it is very, very expensive job. There again, we have to work within the limitations we have. But there also you can, as a very popular saying, necessity is the mother of invention. So you can invent with all these things. How could otherwise, you know, in the 50s, after the war, after the Second Great War, how could it be that Italian neorealism was born? How could it be that entirely different genre of film that was built by the French people, Nouvelle Vague, new cinema.
You've talked about how you were influenced by Jules and Jim.
I was very much influenced by Jules and Jim. I was influenced by many other things. I was influenced by neorealism. And for instance, I can tell you a very interesting story about it. Don't you take me to be an academic, because I am farthest away from the academics. So I don't have any academic discipline. But then this story I like very much, so I go by the anecdotes. One day, Zavattini, one of the architects of neorealism, he had a session with an American producer. He said, "What are you doing?" The American producer said, "You have no dearth of stories, you know, but if you have to show an aeroplane passing by, well, you show it, and that makes a film. But in our case, if we have to make a film," the American producer said, "with an aeroplane, we have to show that an aeroplane passes by, and suddenly there is some technical snag while in flight, and then it had to do crash landing, and my hero or heroine gets injured," something like this. That makes, this is what I was telling, they need incidents, they need plots and all. And Zavattini said, "Yes, my job is to see." You know, he was one of the architects of the neorealism. He said, "My job is to see that aeroplane flies. If I could do that, aeroplane flies. For the second time it flies. For the third time it flies, it will fly 50 times. Because we try to make things spectacular by their natural qualities, not by their exceptional qualities. The natural quality of a plane is to fly. And the exceptional quality of a plane is to develop some technical snags and to do crash landing. So that is why we are not for that, we are for this." So this is what I'm talking about. I was influenced by very many things. But when you talk about the technological development, now these days with computers and other things, a lot of things have been happening. And computers have been working so much so that I will not be surprised if in 3 years or 4, you will hear that the biggest actress award has been backed by a robotess. I will not be surprised, but that will be very sad. And let me call a spade a spade. If I watch, would you mind if I call a spade a spade?
Of course.
There will be no problem. When I watch a Spielberg film, I sit up and take very respectful note of the tremendous advances of science and technology that are projected in his cinema. But then at the same time, you know, I see that. But what I am seeing, what I am watching magic. But cinema is not a vehicle of magic. I don't get the aesthetic delight. So that is what makes the difference. You know, so I get a kind of vicarious pleasure when I find such things. A man knowing so much of cinema, the whole of cinema is at his fingertips, Spielberg, and he has everything at his command. He can do anything. But even then, an Iranian filmmaker, Kiarostami, having very small things at his command, he makes one of the finest films. It happened only 2 years ago. It got the best award in Cannes. And that was a great achievement, I must say, for all of us, for the people who have been wanting to make different kind of films.
Your own work in films has been deeply responsive, reactive in some senses to the crises and the evolution and the changes in Bengal. But they have also been governed by an ideological framework that we would describe as Marxism.
Well, you can't live without ideology, but then at the same time, I know what you mean. Initially, you were a very decent man, that is why you don't want to offend me. But even otherwise, many people have offended me. So what is this? What is Mrinal doing? Mrinal is making all the
political pamphleteering.
You know, pamphleteering. Yes. I am not ashamed of being a pamphleteer if it makes a point. That was the time when there was a lot of unrest in Calcutta. And I cannot just pull myself out of the atmosphere in which I grow, in which I weep, in which I get angry. You know, so all that I did at that time, I wanted to point my accusing finger at the enemy outside. That was when I brought the physical reality very close to me. I used to bring the physical reality onto the screen. And that was when I used to be creatively blatant. After a certain time, when the political atmosphere changed, the scenario also changed in my home state, that means Bengal, when I could see a government has come to stay with a lot of lofty promises, but they couldn't deliver the goods the way I thought it would be. And that was the time when, instead of pointing my finger at the enemy outside, I wanted to point my finger at the enemy within myself. It is almost like pulling myself by the hair and making me stand before the mirror and point my accusing finger at the image inside. That was it. It is not self-castigation at all. It is to know myself better. This is what I used to do later on.
Mrinal, as in 1968 or 69, this gentleman did lock you up in a room to produce a script for the thousands of Mrinal Sen, millions of Mrinal Sen fans waiting for the next film. Would you sort of agree to being locked up in a room to come up with your next project?
Well, I have locked myself in my room now, as when I say. So now a situation has come up to such a stage that I feel that I have been locked up. I need fresh air. I need to break the door. I need to go out. I need to do something which is so close to my heart.
Thank you very much indeed. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you very much.